Hello, I'm Trevor Johnson, the executive chef of The Lab Kitchen, and welcome to our date night series. So tonight we're going to show you how to make a lovely meal at your home. What we're making tonight is a black pepper crusted steak. You can use any steak you want. I'm using filet, just because it's my favorite. You can also use hanger steak, you can use sirloin, New York strip, ribeye. You can use any tender cut of steak that doesn't need like a long braising time. So the first thing we're going to do is get our potatoes cooking. I'm making butter potatoes. These are my favorite. And I had them peeled already, but you can choose to peel or not peel them. It's just a matter of preference, whatever kind of texture you like. So I'm going to cut them into about 1-inch cubes. And this way, we get these started first, and by the time the rest of our meat is ready, these should be good to go. So I'm going to get these into a nice big pot. Add just enough water to cover it by about 1 inch. And always make sure potatoes need lots of salt. So as soon as I find my salt, it looks like a lot, but it's really not. Probably about 2 tablespoons of salt. And we're just going to get that going on medium-high heat. So next, the steak. If you're using filet, it also helps to tie it with some butcher's twine around the ends, just so it stays nice and even while it's cooking. So you want to make sure that you salt on all sides. We don't really need to worry about the pepper because that's going to be in the crust that we're going to make later. Give these some love on all sides. And before you start seasoning your meat, make sure you heat your pan, whichever frying pan you're using. I'm using a non-stick, but you can use any kind of cast iron. Cast iron would actually be my preferred choice. I just don't have one here today. You can also just use a basic steel pan. So once our meat is seasoned, I'm going to give this about 30 seconds on high heat to get that nice and hot. Got our potatoes going, our pan is heating up. The idea behind heating up the pan is you want a really hard sear, especially with meat. The sear is what, I know a lot of people think it's what locks in juices. That's not really true. The sear is to develop flavor, and the deeper the sear, the more intense the flavor. That's how you get that really savory, beefy flavor to it. So I'm going to add about a couple tablespoons of neutral canola oil. Just enough to coat the bottom surface of the pan. And we want this to come up to what's called the smoke point. That's when the oil starts smoking. That's how you know it's ready to go. Get our tongs ready. And after we sear, we're going to go right in the oven. And while the steak is baking, we're going to make the crust for it. So, not quite there yet. Another thing we can do while we're waiting for our pan to heat up is grab some of the fresh herbs that we need to have picked. So I've got some fresh rosemary. And some fresh thyme. These are what we're going to use for our sauce later. And you're probably going to need about, say about a teaspoon chopped of each herb. Of course, if you're not a fan of either of these herbs, rosemary or thyme, you can substitute sage, you can use oregano. This is really about just the technique of properly searing a steak and making a nice pan sauce. So get this in a container, save that for later. All right, so we come back over our pan, you can see it's smoking. Now it doesn't have to be smoking quite this much. This might even be a little too hot, but as soon as you start seeing the smoke, so we're going to give these a nice hard sear, probably about 2 minutes on each side. And what you're looking for is nice, deep, dark, golden color. If you're not actually timing it, sometimes what you'll be able to see is you'll be able to see the dark brown start to crawl up the sides a little bit. So we'll let those kind of hang out. Now I'm also, while we're letting those steaks sear, I'm going to get our pea puree ready. So I got some fresh frozen peas, about a pound of them. I'm going to take half of them and put them in our blender. Back over on our steak. See this right here? You can see that crust is starting to creep up the sides. That's how you know it's done. So when I flip that over, that's just a gorgeous golden brown crust. So we'll just let those chill out. About another minute. And so what we're doing with the peas is making a sauteed medley of some spring vegetables. And the idea with making the pea puree is almost like getting a nice rich sauce to coat our vegetables in, but one that doesn't have excess amounts of fat or butter, so it's all vegetables. Make sure we get these seared on all sides. You don't want any visible pink anywhere on the steak. So now we've got our steak seared. want to do next is make our crust. So the crust is very simple. It's just coarsely ground black pepper. And we're going to season it with just a little bit of salt. The real secret to restaurant quality food is you want to make sure that every component has a little bit of salt. We'll take some of our chopped herbs. And this part is optional, but I like to add some breadcrumbs just to give a little more texture to the crust. If you're gluten-free or for some reason just don't feel like using breadcrumbs, you can totally leave them out. Just give this a nice stir. And to our meat, we are going to add some whole grain mustard. The mustard is a way of kind of gluing the breading to the top of the steak. If you have a basting brush, that would work best, but it's quarantine, so we make do with what we have. And you really don't need much, probably about a teaspoon. If you don't like mustard, you could just dip the steak in a little bit more oil. That would also help stick. So just get a nice even coating of our mustard here. We're going to take our steak and just dip it in that beautiful black pepper herb crust. Really press it in there and make sure you get a nice, generous coating of it. But remember, there's no pepper on this steak, so we want to make sure we got a nice, strong pepper flavor. And then you're gonna go right into a very hot oven. So my oven is at 450 right now. That's what I would recommend as well. You're probably gonna leave it in there for roughly 6 to 8 minutes, depending on the size of your meat. And 6 to 8 minutes, that's for about medium rare. If you need to check the temperature, I would recommend a meat thermometer. And the temperature you're looking for is about 134. That's what we consider perfect medium rare. So let's check on our potatoes here. We want to make sure we're not making mashed potatoes. We want to make sure they're just fork tender. So right when my fork starts to go through them, that's when I'm taking them out. I want them to still keep their shape. I want them to still be whole and have some nice texture to them. So for our pea puree, we have our peas, and we also have about a small bunch of parsley in here, probably about half a cup. I'm just gonna add about a 1/4 cup of water, just to get everything going. A small pinch of salt. Put this in our blender. Always start your blender on low. And if it's looking like it's not blending very well, just add a dash more water. We're looking for a nice, smooth, creamy consistency. nice, bright, fresh green puree that we'll use to coat our vegetables. So set that aside. So while our steak is cooking, next thing we can get to work on is preparing our vegetables. I'm using asparagus because it's beautiful, it's springtime. I'm also going to show you a little shortcut for perfectly blanched vegetables. So I'm just going to cut these into nice diagonal pieces here just because it's date night. You want them to look nice. You want to impress whoever you're cooking for. And make sure you have a microwave ready dish. A nice glass dish is best. You can use plastic, but I would just recommend glass only because repeatedly microwaving plastic has a tendency to break down and degrade the container over time. Okay. So, got all our chopped asparagus. Small pinch of salt. And I'm going to wrap this with some plastic wrap. And then pop it in the microwave on high for about a minute and a half. Another potato check. See, we're almost there. I have another few seconds. By the time I get ready to drain the potatoes, they should be good to go. So I'm just going to drain all the water. And then transfer them to a mixing bowl just to hang out until we're ready to plate them. So, some things I've done ahead of time. I've gotten some, this is about 2 large shallots finely minced, and I also have about 4 cloves of garlic minced. And we're going to use the garlic and the shallots for both our sauces and our potatoes. Let's check on our asparagus here. Nice and bright green. Crunchy. Not mushy, not overcooked. Exactly what we're looking for. Set that aside as well. Another thing we can do while our steak is cooking is we can start building our sauce. So, the reason I say cast iron or steel pans probably work best is because you get a nice, what's called fond, the little burnt brown bits on the bottom of the pan. I don't really have that because this is a non-stick pan, but I do have some of the oil that's still there, the residue that's been flavored by the meat. So what we're gonna do is, to that oil, we're gonna add about half of our shallots. And also about half of our garlic. And a little bit of butter. You certainly don't have to use butter, but as the old saying goes, everything is better with butter, especially if it's a special occasion. And we're just gonna let these sweat and start to caramelize. I've got the burner on about medium-high heat right now. Another optional but recommended thing is to go with our vegetables. I'm adding some chopped scallions, just because I love the bite and the brightness that scallions bring. So I'm probably going to chop about half a cup here. And when we bring all our vegetables together, I'll mix those in. So you can see the onions and the garlic are starting to get a little translucent. This is what's referred to as sweating. Since we're making a nice red wine sauce, we want it to have a little more flavor, so we're going to caramelize it a little bit more. And we're going to deglaze with some nice red wine. Whenever you're cooking with wine, you want to make sure it's a wine that you want to drink. You don't have to go crazy and buy an expensive wine, but I certainly wouldn't recommend using any kind of cheap wine or boxed wine or anything that you wouldn't want to drink, because that flavor carries over into the sauce. All right, so now we've got a little more color here. You can see around the edges there's some burnt bits, some nice caramelized shallots. So we're going to add about a cup of red wine. And also about a half a cup of water or stock or whatever you have. I'm going to put that on high and let that reduce. That's going to be the base of our sauce. Okay. So our steak's been in the oven for about 7 minutes. I'm going to check on here. Oh, it smells amazing. That looks just about done. So the way that chefs are trained to tell the temperature of the meat is by touch. So if you take your thumb and your index finger and you press right here, that consistency, that feeling, that's about what a rare steak would be like. If you touch your thumb to your middle finger, that's about medium rare, which is right where we want to be. I wouldn't really recommend going past this, but to each their own. But if you're using filet, please do not go past medium rare. While that reduces, I'm going to prepare our potatoes. In that same pot that we boiled them in, I'm going to add about 1/4 cup of olive oil. And the rest of our shallots. And just because I worked out today, I'm going to add a little more butter. And these we do not want to caramelize. We want these to be nice and sweated. Just to bring the flavor out, we're going to use this to coat this shallot garlic oil to coat our potatoes. Check our sauce. So while you're reducing, you want to look for the consistency of about maple syrup. That's what's going to give a nice glaze. So we're about halfway there. Another thing we can do is also get our vegetables going. And these don't need any oil of any kind. So first, we're gonna, to an empty pot, we're gonna add that smooth pea puree we did. We're just gonna bring that up to a boil, as well as the scallions that we chopped earlier. While it's heating up, we can chop the last of our ingredients. Just have some fresh chives here. Potatoes and chives are best friends. I'm going to chop them nice and thin. And this is really just a garnish, you don't need a lot. So we're going to save those for right when we're ready to plate our potatoes. We're getting there, we're getting there. Not quite. Okay, so our pea puree is all heated up. So that we can add the rest of our peas, as well as our asparagus. Just let that all coat and get married together. Taste it, see if it needs a little salt. Alright, so this is our beautiful red wine reduction. So once you get this consistency, this nice, thick, syrupy consistency, take it off the heat. Our vegetables are just about done. So set those aside and get working on potatoes. Once you reach that syrupy consistency on your red wine reduction, you're gonna take 2 tablespoons of room temperature butter and you're just gonna stir. What this does is it adds the viscosity that you want in a good sauce. It adds fat, it adds flavor. You want to make sure you use room temperature butter so that your sauce doesn't separate, so it doesn't look greasy. Into that, I'll also add the rest of our chopped herbs. And a little pinch of salt. It was actually perfect timing on our steak because one of the most important things into cooking a steak to the right temperature is giving it adequate resting time. So this time between when it came out of the oven and us getting the rest of our dish ready is going to be a perfect amount of resting time. One thing I need to say. So our potatoes, we have some nice, let me wash this off. We have our shallots and our garlic all sweated. Just gonna add our potatoes back into that. Get them nice and coated. Sometimes you need a little bit more salt, sometimes you don't, depending on how much you add to the water. These do need a little bit more. And to that, we're gonna add the zest of 1 lemon. And our chives. Look how pretty those look. Nice brightness from the lemon. So our potatoes are done. Last thing I'm going to add to our vegetables is a good squeeze of lemon juice. And those are done as well. So now it's time to plate. If your sauce starts to look a little bit like it's separated, just remove it from the heat. Put it on a nice cold counter and give it a little stir. Just give this a taste. Little salt. Get this ready to pour. So it's really a matter of preference how you like to play it. I'm going to start with the potatoes, just because everyone loves a nice potato drowned in some beautiful sauce. And then I'm going to take our steak. You can slice it or not. I'm going to slice it just to show the cook and just because I like the presentation. Look at that. Nice, perfect medium rare. Take our smothered spring vegetables. Just kind of ladle them on the side. And then, have that beautiful red wine sauce we made right over the top. And there you have it. Date night. And now we're going to welcome our lab nutritionist, Alex, and we're going to answer some of your questions. So, let's take this. So, as soon as Alex is on, we will take your questions and we'll have a nice little chat. Oh, you probably want to see me eat it. So let's taste this. It's really good. And the best part of this is I don't feel bad eating it because I know most of you are eating it as well. Okay. All right, looks like we're linking to Alex now.
Hi, Trevor. This looks absolutely amazing. I'm so jealous I'm not cooking right now.
That's okay, thank you.
Yeah, so for everyone who doesn't know who I am, as Trevor said before, my name is Alex, and I am the current nutrition specialist for the lab. I'm going to be asking Trevor some of your questions, so let's get started. Question one is, what's the reason for microwaving the asparagus before cooking it in the pan?
So the reason for microwaving is the same reason that you see chefs often blanch vegetables. It provides it. It's a slight cooking just to give you a nice crisp texture. And the microwaving is just a shortcut to blanching, so you don't have to worry about boiling water and chilling it down afterwards.
Great idea. All right, next question. Can you leave some on the doorstep? All right. Next question is a question that I had. So I know that you talked about the sauce separating, but what if you find that your sauce is too thick? And this goes for any types of sauces. What can you do to fix that?
So if it's too thick, that probably means you reduce it just a little too far. So it just needs more liquid. So a splash of water, stock, or whatever liquid you use to make the sauce, and just give it a nice stir, and it should come back.
All right, great. Another question. How do you keep the vegetables so green?
So the reason the vegetables look so green today is because of that bright pea puree we made. There was parsley in that. Parsley really helps the color, as well as the blanching process, or the microwave blanching in this case. And that's another reason to do it, is because it makes the vegetables nice and vibrant.
Awesome. So also another question. What's your favorite wine to pair with this dish?
My favorite wine, I would probably say a Burgundy, or any sort of red wine. But of the red wines, that would be my favorite, as a Burgundy. If you don't have Burgundy, that's totally fine. Like I said, it's just make sure it's the wine that you want to drink.
Definitely. All right. And I know you mentioned that asparagus is in season right now. What other vegetables are in season?
So peas are also in season. That's why I included the peas here. Lots of salad greens like spinach, arugula. What else? Radishes, um, snow peas are also in season. So yeah, my best recommendation for that is just um, take a walk to your favorite grocery store or farmer's market and just ask what they have.
Great idea. And I know right now a lot of us are in a weird state right now and we're just using frozen food maybe, so frozen vegetables. Would
Yep.
there be a different way to prepare those?
So this actually works great with frozen peas as well. You just want to make sure that they're thawed to room temperature before blending them. And that's really the biggest difference is just make sure that all your vegetables are at room temperature.
All right. And one more question. How would you recommend reheating leftovers to not overcook the steak? That's a great question.
So the best way to reheat a steak, if you've sliced it like I did, try to make sure you kind of press the slices back together so it looks like one piece, and then put it in the oven, put it in your cold oven, and then turn the oven to 350. And usually when it gets to around 325, 350, it should be nice and warm in the center.
Thank you so much, Trevor. So if anyone has any other questions, feel free to DM us at You Need the Lab Chef or just You Need the Lab, and we'll be sure to answer any of those questions. And also a recording of this demo will be on our YouTube. So if you ever want to make it in the future, you can. So thank you so much, Trevor.
Thank you.